Hey Skiba News Nation family, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can also help support this channel by getting yourself some Skiba News Nation merch. Also, we are proud to announce that we are now on Patreon, where you will get bonus content, shoutouts, and much more. Thank you again for watching and helping us stay on the quest for truth. Huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you. If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation. We are also proud to announce that Skiba News Nation podcast is now available on podcast platforms.
I don't care what it costs. I want to know what the truth is. And I hope that people, my son, anybody, if my name comes up, whether you like me, whether you agree with me or not, at least you can respect the fact that he's on a quest for truth. He's on a quest for truth.
Welcome to Skiba News Nation, bringing you unfiltered views, news, interviews, discussions, and more. And now, here's your host, Jeremiah Skiba, award-winning musician and son of Rob Skiba.
Hey Skiba News Nation family, welcome to episode 24 of Skiba News Nation. I'm your host, Jeremiah Skiba, and we have a very, very special episode for you guys this week because my great co-host, Jake Grant, is in studio with us. Welcome, Jake.
What's up, Jeremiah?
See, look, we're this close.
I'm here in person.
This week we're going to be talking about USA southern border to deter invasion. The United Nations Environment Control Plan, Ye, aka Kanye West, warns us about how they will control us. Moon Trip IQ Test, Globalist McDonald's, Died Suddenly trailer, The Refusers Are Mentally Ill Could Be Force, Spikes in Excess Mortality, What is Causing it? The Coming Worker Shortage Due to the Lack of Skill and Will, an all-new Opus Corner. And for history, we're going to be talking about Houdini murdered for exposing the spiritualists and the hypocrisy of the left, memes, and much more, so stay tuned. All right, Jake, well, do you want to jump right into our live version of Skiba News Nation?
Yeah, I'm excited. We got some great news stories for you guys today, and it's great to be here in person to be able to chat with you and kind of bounce around some thoughts on the current news. Let's get into it.
Let's do it.
So I thought it was very important to start our show off today with some of these pictures. Let's bring these up on screen here. Not sure if it's 2022 or if it's 1984.
That's true.
Now, of course, if you're familiar with the novel that is titled 1984, you're familiar with the constant war against truth that the book kind of describes. And we're literally living through a very similar situation in today's world in 2022, where the truth is censored and where things that the woke media doesn't want to publish are buried deep under the ground. And so, you know, that's why we do shows like this, because we want to trumpet the truth. We want to be on a quest for the truth. And it's important to not lay down one of the most important rights we have here in the Western world, which is our freedom of speech, which, you know, along with that comes a lot of our other freedoms, like our freedom of faith, our freedom to stand up against tyranny, our freedom to not follow
freedom of guns,
freedom of, you know, Second Amendment. You know, we're just dealing with First Amendment now, but Second Amendment, and to speak about things like that, like the attack on the other freedoms that we have. You know, these are so important. And so whenever the draconian information controlling state steps into power and they remove our ability to voice our concerns about certain topics, hey, they're attacking that First Amendment, man. And
that's when it starts getting scary.
Yeah, it does. And it has been a very scary past 2 years with all the different things falling on the world stage as the great economic reset is happening, as the great constriction of the New World Order, the boa constrictor New World Order representation tightens its grip on humanity through protocols and mandates, and all these different things are what's important to us to unpack and uncover. So let's show this next picture. I know if you're familiar with King of the Hill cartoon.
It's based right here in Dallas.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. 1997, Dale Gribble was considered a paranoid conspiracy theorist. In 2022, Dale Gribble is sounding more sane each week.
That's true.
All right, let's go to our next picture here. See, the truth is we are all under a trance. For most, the spell can't be broken. And I love the lingual breakdown of how spellcraft and spelling is tied to language and its use over mankind, and how it's the power of words that can convince the masses. And it's just people today, they have to realize that there is such a thing as conspiracy. Conspiracy is just a number of people working together to convince the other out of the know people to follow a set guideline or plan, so that those who are in the know can grow in power and wealth and prestige and whatever. Often it just boils down to the love of money and just simple root human emotions and drives. And it seems to be this cascading evil empire, but oftentimes it's just, people, they like to, coddle themselves and their own kind of wealth and prestige. And so there's like this group think effect that happens where we have political correctness is then forced on the population. But who gets to decide what's politically correct?
The fact checkers.
The fact checkers. And they all have blue hair, So with all that shared, this is a continuing battle with Skiba News Nation, and we're fighting a multinational corporate war with the power of memes.
And YouTube.
Trying
to block us.
Yeah, at least we're still on the platform. Hey, I'm grateful for that.
Yeah, thank you, YouTube.
But that leads us into some cutting news. We have some stories that I found interesting about an interesting event at the southern U.S. border. Let's go ahead and check out this video.
This is Dabu7, and it seems the mainstream media wants to turn a cheek to what's happening at the border. But you just can't turn a blind eye to what's happening there, because this invasion is getting larger and larger, and it's exactly what it is. It's exactly what it's been dubbed at this point by the Texas governor, and he is now sending out these armored tanks, these M113 armored personal carriers, to various positions along the border with troops, and this is after he threatened to send gunboats down into the area to stop this influx of migrants at the border. On the live show, I showed thermal drone images of these armies of people crossing the border daily. A shout outs to Dark Sky Watcher down there in Arizona working the border. The work is appreciated, my brother. He's tracking down coyotes and drug smugglers and all this other stuff. And coyotes are people that smuggle people, human traffickers and things of that nature. And they're coming across a lot of it. So at this point, these heavily armored vehicles that move on tracks are being put down on the border with troops to run them. And as of right now, it is unclear if these vehicles here will be equipped with weapons, because they can equip heavy machine guns and grenade launchers on these types of vehicles. This is an update of what's going on down at the border, as tens of thousands of millions of people are crossing that border into this country, if anyone cares. I'll leave links below. Follow me on Twitter for more. It's been Dabu7. Peace.
Well, Jeremiah, this goes really great with a video you're going to share later on during our history segment regarding the whole border topic. And it's interesting to me that there's such kind of a military response to the number of people crossing the border. And it seems to be in contrast to what the narrative from kind of the left-leaning media and politics has been sharing of open arms, welcoming people in droves as they enter the country illegally. And this is just an ongoing topic over the past few years. And the reason sometimes it is concerning as waves and waves of people enter into a society illegally is the very same thing we saw in parts of Europe where Syrian refugees and refugees from a lot of the wars in the Middle East would enter into European countries and have no basis for assimilating into that society, into that culture. And so you'd have all kinds of problems arising, like the number of sexual assaults, aggravated sexual assaults would go through the roof. You would have all these different examples of, military age men coming into your society who don't want to learn your language, don't want to abide by your laws or rules, but they're leaving one country of destitution and they're bringing sometimes some of those bad components of where they're coming from into your society. And it's just something to pay attention to. I thought it was interesting that they're using military vehicles and something I wanted to bring up today. Let's check out this video report.
Truth is out there.
Very interesting UFO photograph that was given to the Ministry of Defense, and allegedly it was lost, right?
Wow.
And so this video demonstrates that, hey, sometimes even really compelling photographs of some of these extraterrestrial phenomenon or sightings of giants or bones of giants or Bigfoot, whatever, these things disappear when you bring the authorities in, like the Smithsonian in the case of large humanoid bones, right?
And they try to discredit you, and they call you a
Exactly.
conspiracy theorist, and that's the new term, crazy.
Yep.
They try to make that out to be crazy people as conspiracy theorists, but I mean, a lot of them have a lot of credibility to it.
Yeah, and especially if they see enough credibility in it that they whisk it away and hide it in some dark underground bunker somewhere, or
Like Indiana Jones.
Yeah, like Indiana Jones. There's a giant warehouse of a lot of boxes. How interesting that in recent years they're starting to admit that, yeah, we did hide the photo away. We're at fault here that there's
Sorry,
a cover
guys.
up. Sorry, but now we're backtracking because we want it to go along with our current narrative. Let's bring up our first news meme here. All right, so sometimes it's important to recognize that our clothing is killing us. And this is all tied to the aspect of microplastics and fibers in our food and our drinking water and our clothing. But it says here 60% of clothing is made with polyester. 33% of household dust is microplastic fibers from polyester clothing. And apparently these fibers settle in our food, our drinking water, and cause DNA damage, infertility, and cancer. So it was just an interesting comment here. We need to return to cotton and linen, which, of course, if you ever looked in kind of the biblical narrative, those are the two main fabrics used, cotton and linen. But anyways, I thought that was interesting. Let's
Very
show
interesting.
our next picture here. What we think we need, and it's a picture of Black Friday sale. Of course, we're coming up on these days of people rushing to get their presents for the holiday season. But underneath it says what we really need. and it's land, it's a garden, it's nature, it's that peaceful serenity of being able to go out and grab food out of something that you've put your hands into and not have to, fight the hustle and bustle of the big city, markets. Well, let's share our next picture here. So something that recently happened is the big crypto FTX Ponzi scheme kind of crash. A lot of people lost a lot of money. This guy is actually breaking records for, a billionaire that's lost most of his wealth in the shortest period of time. But I thought this was really poignant. If you think the FTX Ponzi scheme was bad, wait until you hear about Jekyll Island in 1913. And so
maybe that'd be a good history topic. I don't know anything about that.
Oh man, there's so much to this. So the Jekyll Island 1913 event was the formation of the Federal Reserve. And so a lot of our banking system today, kind of the corporatization of North America, all of these schemes kind of were formulated during this meeting on Jekyll Island. And there's even some interesting occultic ties to Jekyll Island. There's a book called It Came from Jekyll Island that was published that exposes a lot of the truth regarding this origin of the biggest Ponzi scheme that we're living in right now, which is tied to the Social Security system. It's tied to the Federal Reserve and the American dollar being taken off of the gold standard and being moved to fractional reserve banking, which is how enormous, exorbitant amounts of debts are able to be levied against the value of people equity, which is what we give away with our birth certificates. All of these are very significant things, and people see like scams like the FTX thing, and they're like, oh man, people lost so much money in this crypto market crash, and people were convinced to invest in this system that seemed to be just levied on, I think it was like 10 people that lived in a house. The FTX founder, they had like a harem that they all lived together, and their whole crypto cartel thing just collapsed overnight, and they're siphoning money away. And
now I know very little about crypto, but does this have anything to do with the GameStop thing? Or is that a whole different topic in itself?
So the GameStop topic is the premise of buying into shorted stocks. And shorted stocks means somebody saying, I think this stock's going to go down. And so that's them betting that it's going to go down. And so when a bunch of people buy a shorted stock and somebody who was betting against it is stuck promising that they will buy that stock at a lower number, and then the number starts to go up, that's when overnight, millionaires can be made, because somebody can invest a couple grand, and something that was worth 1 cent, the day before can be worth, $5 the next day, and overnight, hey, they got thousands of % of return. And that is how a lot of these cryptocurrency companies are burning and crashing, is because they have over leveraged themselves in the crypto, because GameStop is more of a traditional stock market.
Yeah.
Well, crypto, people leverage and short cryptos. And a lot of these exchanges, and even an exchange that I worked for personally, I worked for a billionaire for a couple months running his YouTube live stream on Friday nights. And that company that I previously worked for just turned belly up and, pretty much lost all of their customers' money. And they had, FTX had billions of dollars, and it pretty much just, evaporated. And so, that kind of, I know we're going on about this topic a little bit.
Yeah, I didn't know if it had anything to do with it or not. I was just curious what you had to say about it, or like what your thoughts were about it.
Yeah, it's definitely a interesting time because of the reset that they want to make. The World Economic Forum dubbed these, I think 2021, as the Great Reset, right? And all of these shifting and transition periods of money from traditional currencies, from world banking things to crypto, and all of these different things are ways that the elite are siphoning money off and preparing for whatever this next world system is. A lot of people believe that the FTX crash was a cover-up for funneling millions of dollars into not only Ukraine but into the Democratic Party and all these ways of shifting around money, because with the cryptocurrency age, the ability for billionaires to very quietly and discreetly transition their finances from one place to another it's easier now than ever. And so that's why big things like this FTX thing are something to pay attention to, but also realizing that as we transition from the old way of money, which was the Federal Reserve system, and we transition to a more cryptocurrency-backed blockchain financial system, the ability for big banks, big corporations, big government to control your life even more just goes through the roof, because I mean it's in the term blockchain. You literally, like, you have a block and a chain, and it's tied to your key, your signature, your identity, and while it's been pushed on us as this great revolutionary technology that it can help us get outside of the traditional banking system, the moment the big banks pick it up and start banning everything else, we have a serious kind of mark of the beast world currency system that we have to start to learn how to navigate.
Yeah.
All right. Is there any more pictures on there, Oppo? Is that the last? Was that picture 9? All right. So one more picture here. A news post of Justin Trudeau is liberals to facilitate suicide for the mentally ill starting in March. And apparently killing the mentally ill is about to become reality in Canada. The liberal voters made it happen. This is unbelievable. Trudeau's liberals to facilitate suicide for mentally ill. And the reason this is really significant and interesting is something we're going to get on later, and I'll reference back to this picture, of course. But remember, this topic of people who are being painted as mentally ill is very significant, because they're also starting to slip in there that people who reject condoned medical experimentation, right, are now mentally ill because they don't want to go along. And so this is a very interesting thing.
I just wanted to show this. This is in our Skiba News Nation shop, and it says liberalism is a disease, and they haven't flagged it yet. So if you want to get yourself a liberalism is a disease because of that last topic, and because it's true, it's in our Skiba News Nation shop that you'll be able to find on YouTube. It's actually my favorite design in there. One of my favorites.
That's a good one. All right, we have one more picture here, I think. So this is tied to some of the spellcraft and the way that people are coerced and convinced to think and behave in a certain pattern. You know, this is just the word. It goes right along. You have a picture here of a witch casting spells, right? Making a circle, reading her secret words, you know. And then we have underneath it a picture of broadcasting, which is, you know, people speaking words to the nations, right? And because spellcraft and the way that mankind's mind can be coerced into thinking patterns that are to their detriment, it's so telling that, you know, that picture really just lays it out, is people are being brainwashed. People are being coerced into agendas that they don't even understand why they're supporting one side over another or whatever, or why one person's a bigot or one person's not. And it really does. It kind of, it tells this tale of a type of witchcraft that is being conducted on mankind because of the power of technology. But however, you know, like Scuba News Nation, we can use technology for good too.
Yep.
And so we could call ourselves in a way like wizard warriors. You know, we're fighting the witches of the New World Order, right?
Yep.
I don't know. Like maybe there's a cooler way to say that, but I've heard a comedian that I like to listen to dub the process of breaking down spellcraft and the tricky navigation of lingual coercion as slaying wizards, right? So
Yeah. Maybe we'd have to make a T-shirt.
yeah, sounds good
So
to
if
me.
you guys like that, let us know in the comments.
Tell us, how we should phrase it. But we're breaking down the spellcraft of today's world. And so what does it mean to defeat modern witchcraft?
Awesome.
All right, so that brings us into the next video. It's a video regarding the UN's plan to control the world. And it's very relevant to some of these pictures we just previously shared.
The United Nations Agenda 21, Sustainable Development. It is the inventory and control plan. Inventory and control of all land, all water, all minerals, all plants, all animals, all construction, all means of production, all food, all energy, all information, and all human beings in the world. And this is a plan that was agreed to by 179 nations back in 1992. It's a United Nations plan. It's called the Agenda for the 21st Century. And so many of us around the world think that sustainable development, it just sounds so great. Isn't it about recycling and creative reuse and creating energy and food resources for everyone? And the answer is no, it really is not. It's about moving populations into city centers, concentrated city centers, and clearing them out of the rural areas. It's constructed of non-governmental organizations, corporations, and government in order to dictate and regulate what it is that happens around the world. Regionalization is the stepping stone to globalization, and globalization is the standardization of all systems. All systems have to be brought into harmony in order to control them all. And the goal of Agenda 21 is one world government and total control from a central unit. The principles are public-private partnerships, which is fascism. And this is how it's implemented on the ground, is through this joining together between corporations, non-governmental organizations, and governments in order to cut out the actual individual, your voter, and instead to take that to a level where we literally cannot penetrate. This is a corporatocracy. It's a totalitarian state being developed right now all over the world while we are moving towards the end game. We are not there. And this is the opportunity that all of us have now to stand up, to speak out. We are free, and we need to continue to be free. And I do believe that we will win, but we have to become aware that there is a fight.
So yeah, man, it's going to get worse before it gets better. I mean, that's what the Bible tells us, right? In the end times, there is world government. There is mass population just evil things that are going to happen. And it's really interesting to me that they talk about the main things they're seeking to control are people's food independence, people's that live outside of the cities. They are coercing to come into the city centers. They're trying to control our thought process. They're trying to control our teaching of our children. They're trying to control our just pretty much any area of freedom. And this precursor to some of the recent big economic world forum meetings and the health, world WHO meetings and the Great Reset World Economic meeting, all of these kind of were set up in some of these earlier UN plans, right? And it's so interesting to see it playing out. What are some of your thoughts on that video?
I mean, yeah, I agree with you about the it has to get worse before it gets better. I mean, that's the truth. I mean, it's been the truth forever. I mean, what are your thoughts about? I know in the Bible it says something about the last trump, and before, it's in the, like, it says that it's not like a typo or anything. And so my dad didn't believe that it really meant that, but he also believed that take the Bible literally. So he was kind of like, I don't know. So do you think maybe the last trump is, before the end times?
You think tied to the figure Trump?
Yeah. This man right
Hey,
here.
I mean, all that I've come to realize with Scripture is that I don't know much, but that there are layered aspects to biblical prophecy. And in a way, I think it's kind of a wink to the days that we're living in, because I've heard it said prophecy is 20/20 in hindsight, right? We can see how things are fulfilled after we've lived through them.
Yep.
And so maybe one day we'll look back and be like, man, literally Trump, was the president, and all the end times were kicked off during the days of leading up to or after, or during all this turmoil in the world. And it's possible, it's possible that him being Trump, and I know there's even a tie to Trump and Pence, trumpets, which is making that trumpet noise. So maybe it's tied to a wake up call for people to realize, hey, the world is about to get spiritually very dark, and we're about to go into this age of the New World Order. And honestly, there's no telling, but we could be looking back here in a few years and be like, whoa, I wish we'd seen it those days we were talking about it.
Yep.
Were the end times really getting kicked off during Trump's presidency? And
Hopefully it's 2024, the second Trump.
Yeah, well, I mean, would that be the last Trump, or
Barron, or Don Jr.? I don't know.
Gonna be more Trumps coming?
I don't know. I don't think and sorry if you disagree with me, that's fine too. But I would never vote for Don Jr. or, I might vote for Ivanka. I mean, she's more like her dad than
I don't know much about her. I don't know.
Yeah, she'd have to convince me, just like he did. I mean, like I said, I didn't vote for him in 2016 because I was brainwashed at one time and I believed everything that the news was telling me, and then I woke up and then I was like, this is crazy, like that they have me believing something that is completely false, until I started doing my own research, which is something my dad always said.
Yeah.
You got to do your own research. So I did, and woke up. I mean, now I'm the most conservative person you'll ever meet. People are surprised when they see me because of the way I look, and they're like,
You're conservative?
Yeah, you're conservative. They see my MAGA hat or whatever it is, and they'll be like, oh my gosh, like I would have never expected. It's just fun.
Yeah, I of course, personally, I'm just always very wary of whenever one door opens, is there a reason they want us to go through that door? And with the political game, I've heard it said, the whole, two wings of the same carrion bird, right? And so, like, as these UN plans move forward, I can only hope that Trump will speak up against globalization, and if he gets in during the next term, that he will go against mandates and things like that. And so that's my hope, is that we can always have a hope that there will be truth shown on some of these agendas that we're covering, and guys like Trump and who we're going to see in this next video, right? Kanye. They seem to have a knack for speaking truth, even though that they're these big public figures.
Yeah.
And so it's not all bad coming from the top echelons of society. Sometimes there are truths, like this video we're about to see with Ye, pretty much dictating what was just watched in this UN control video from what was talked about back in the 90s.
The 1% used to control the 99%. That's water, food, education, shelter, and medicine.
Water, food, medicine, housing. Some of these things are the very things that UN video was breaking down and talking about, as their control plan is all about moving people into these dense city populations where it's easier to control those areas. So let's watch it one more time. And
resources for everyone in the world to be happy. There's 5 resources that the 1% use to control the 99%. That's water, food, education, shelter, and medicine. And everyone can have the best version of that. And that's our promise of what we're doing here. Welcome here, right here.
Absolutely.
All right, that's good for now.
That's all.
So that was just a random paparazzi guy that was invited in to see what Kanye Ye's setup there was, and it's interesting that he's dropping those truth bombs, and those are significant. And it is true that these big corporations are controlling water, food, medicine, housing, education, because
I will say there are some good teachers out there, but I didn't even tell you the story because it happened last night when I posted that photo of all three of us. But I had a teacher that was a friend that friended me on Facebook that said something about, do you support the LGBTQ community? And I was like, you're a teacher. You were my teacher in middle school. And it just weirded me out. And I mean, like, they're great teachers. Like my girlfriend, Lindsay, she's an amazing teacher, and she is not like, you know, the education system. She's very much, she stands out, and she lets the kids have their own mind, which is awesome. But people like my teacher, I mean, I didn't even know what to say. I just had to delete her comment because I was like, this is just bringing me down. Like, she was one of my favorite teachers too. And
wow.
And I went to her page and it was like all LGBTQ stuff, and I was like, ugh, this is where we're at.
Yeah, I mean, teachers are turned into role models for kids if they're good teachers, and that means, you know, all those kids that they're probably still teaching, if they look up to that teacher, then they're adopting a lot of those worldviews. Man. Yeah, I think education and how we share information to the next generation is super important. I think that a lot of these agendas that are being pushed on us is because they've had, 15 years to kind of grow up and groom, I used the word, a whole generation of people to feel a certain way towards one or, you know, particular topic or another. And then these people age into adulthood where they're now voting individuals, and then they vote in politicians that are their compatriots, and then these agendas then become, you know,
the woke mob.
The woke mob. So yeah, it's a hard time to navigate, and that's why, you know, I definitely am a big advocate for like homeschooling and you know, parents giving their kids the information that they want them to have in response to a lot of the public school agendas and the educational, you know, kind of topsy-turvy world that we have, especially in California and places where they're, you know,
the liberal states,
they're mandating sex education for young children, and you don't need anybody teaching your kids about
grooming.
that kind of
that
stuff.
Is the definition
exactly.
Of it.
So yeah, I mean, not only that, but all of these educational agendas distract from the fact that we're giving up our rights for those other four things, right? Water, food, housing, you know, all the different aspects of control. I think these agendas help divide, and then they get to sweep the rug out from under us. And
they want us to own nothing. I heard that on a Joe Rogan podcast where they were talking about in like 5 years they want us to own nothing.
You'll own nothing and be happy about it.
Yeah, that's what it was.
We'll live in a box with 4 screens on each wall, and we'll live our whole life in like a metaverse matrix cube.
Metaverse doesn't even look real. I mean, come on.
Oh, they're hoping it'll look real eventually. I think it
looks like the Wii.
Yeah,
remember
it's
that
true.
game?
Yeah. Those
I don't know if I could
guys were so janky. Like little like
Did we cover that on the show about the metaverse rape?
Oh yes. Yeah, I remember that.
That was some crazy stuff.
That
it's
was
like,
crazy.
You know, that's where we're headed. Sadly.
Well, in another realm of news, last week we covered a article about the Artemis mission to bring us back to the moon after over like 50 years or something, right? Woohoo! And of course, if you guys are aware of who you're listening to right now, we're very skeptical of some of these presented space programs, which I wanted to share a video about this current moon trip And it's really almost an IQ test to see if you buy into it all or not. So let's check out this video.
We'll be passing over, some of the Apollo landing sites. Unfortunately, they're going to be in the darkness. They will not be sunlit, so we won't get very good video of them.
You say that the video is going to be delayed. Can we get a more approximate time frame as to how long it's going to be until we're going to actually get to see this video? What sort of quality is the video going to be? And finally, can you just kind of explain why we're not getting to see these images live? I mean, I believe the Apollo 11 landing was broadcast live. Why now don't we have the technology to see all of this live?
There is video that comes down from the spacecraft that we get here live in MCC that we were able to see coming directly off the video.
They were a lot of fun to watch.
We're going to record it while the Orion's out of the line of sight of the ground stations that bring the video down. Once we have that recorded on board, when we reacquire signal, when Orion comes out from behind the moon, we're going to downlink that video as fast as we can. Unfortunately, given the distance that Orion is and the fact that we do have some fairly high quality video, it's going to take a little bit of time. It's going to be a little slower than we might have want, but as soon as we get the data down,
I'm sure our video processing folks will be processing that.
Which of course leads to some of the video and pretty pictures.
We are expecting to provide some good imagery.
We want to share it with the public and get it to you folks as fast as we can.
And we're being as transparent as we can here.
First of all, we don't have the exact velocity at the sphere of influence where Orion will then become under the primary influence of the moon's gravity, but we don't have that exact figure available to us at this point.
I just would have thought that was a potentially more significant issue, but obviously not. Any little details you can share?
It was really a case where we were seeing something we didn't understand. We saw something we didn't quite understand.
Again, something that we didn't fully understand, and apologize that we didn't share that sooner. That was after a very long day that we had a funny with the Star Tracker. Had over a dozen funnies on the list, so it was just something that we just didn't understand. It was outside of our experience base. We need to worry about those types of things, but I would just again ask for a little bit of patience as we work through it. It's just taking a little bit of time.
So is there going to be any more engineering footage from the launch offered? And we've been expecting more views, not only of the mission, but also from the launch pad.
This is a phenomenon we will expect to continue periodically throughout the rest of the mission.
And show you a 3D model, or show you kind of the graphic. In terms of more media release, yes, absolutely. We will share footage from the launch. We do have to manage bandwidth for any information that is recorded on board the Orion spacecraft. There are many other customers, science customers, that use the Deep Space Network. There is a capacity that we share there with other customers, but the data that is on the ground, we do need to go through that, and we have folks that
literally have to look through every still image and every video that's released. Our video processing folks will be processing that.
So again, I would just ask for your patience and let us work through that process, and we will absolutely share what we can as soon as it's available. We have other team members that are focused on sharing with the general public and all of you in the media what we can as soon as we can, and we're committed to do that. We've seen a number of issues with file transfers, but obviously, imagery, we love it. We want to share it as much as we can. We want to record it. But if we're having issues getting it off of the vehicle,
I believe the Apollo 11 landing was broadcast live.
Actually slows the effort to share things with the team. And
why now don't we have the technology to see all of this live?
We did have a number of communications glitches. We had either forward or return link problems. Jim, do you have anything to add in terms of the anomalies?
Can you explain why we're not getting to see these images live? I believe the Apollo 11 landing was
broadcast live. Why now don't we have the technology to see all of this live?
Well, what's the answer there, Jeremiah?
They think we're stupid.
Why can't we live broadcast in 2022 when they live broadcast back in 1970s?
They lost it.
1969?
They lose the technology for that too?
Yeah, well, apparently. I mean, that's what these guys are seeming to indicate. I mean, it's
craziness.
It's it truly is. And
I'm glad those people were asking those questions.
Yeah.
They were like not giving up until they gave them a straight up answer. They didn't know how to answer it.
I mean, of course, we can tell that video of that conference for the Artemis mission is heavily kind of chopped up just to show kind of their gaffes. But I mean, how many times did they say over and over, we just don't know. It's a mystery.
Me of, Jen Psaki. Well, circle back. It's kind of the same.
How did we get through the Van Allen radiation belt? Oh, well, we don't know. We just didn't know about it, so it didn't hurt us.
Yep.
Right. So, anyways, let me show this this picture in relation to space news. They just don't make rockets like they used to. In 1969, it took them 3 days to get to the moon, and today, with the Artemis mission, it'll take 6 days to get to the moon in 2022. So that's kind of interesting. Why the extra time there? Let's show this next picture. Things that make you go, Of the 6 Apollo missions landed on the moon, all on the visible side, adding a total of 12 days. And incredibly, there is not a single minute of Earth footage filmed from these locations. The only celestial body they saw, our supposed home, and they forgot to film it. They forgot to film it 6 times.
Oops.
So these are the original landing sites that you could see here that they were actually asking during this interview process. They were like, hey, are you guys going to be able to film some of these landing locations and show proof, hey, that we were on the moon before, and show the landing locations of all these other Apollo missions? Well, guess what? Sorry. They're going to be in the dark. Sorry. We're going to have to make sure we really go over our video footage and imagery with our video. I forget the term he used. It was like our video crunchers. They're going to make sure we get you guys the good stuff, right?
The greatest video we can get to you guys.
Oh, man. Let's show this next picture. See, the most basic form of mind control is repetition. And there's a reason in our classrooms, they have sitting there a globe. Going to public school, I know this, right? And if you go and look on the label of that globe, in a small text it says, this is not an accurate representation of the Earth. Like, even what they show us in classrooms can be provably false.
Yep.
However, through indoctrination, through repetition, that's why it's so important for the hoorah space program agenda to convince people, hey, this is actually an important endeavor.
Mm-hmm.
However, like we've talked about in the past, I think there's more to find down in the oceans than there is up above.
Yep, absolutely.
So let's show this next picture. Did you know that all of these devices, a telescope, a plumb bob, a planisphere, a thermometer, a camera, P900, a level, a laser, a sextant, a geodetic, an astrolabe, a sundial, a Pascalavese, a gyroscope, a theodolite, and a compass all prove the Earth is flat. And I know, we're not deep diving too much in the FE topic. There's some great research, of course, you guys can go check out over on Rob's channel.
Mm-hmm.
Many exposés. There's
hours and hours and hours of research.
Oh, yeah.
He did.
Videos like Mark Sargent's Flat Earth 101. You have Eric Dubay. You have Globebusters.
Yeah.
You have a lot of different people who really break down this topic. But the point is that there's a deception around the realm that we live in. And while sometimes the term flat earther can be painted as just, all right, you're crazy, don't talk to me anymore. We have to understand that the only reason that there's such a thing as a flat earther in 2022 is because it's a combination of many underlying conspiracies. And when you bring them all together, it starts to make you question the realm that we live in. And that's the significance of exposing some of the just ridiculousness of some of these interviews for this next space program, because they seem to just kick the ball down the road, all the while taking taxpayer monies for these kind of just ridiculous space programs.
Fun fact, I don't know if Lindsay's allowed to do this when she's teaching, but she actually tells her kids that some people believe that the earth is flat. And I don't know if, that's not in her curriculum, but she feels led to do that. And I'm like, that's super cool that you are bringing this up. And a lot of the kids actually know about that topic.
Wow.
Some of their parents, it's funny because
full-blown flat earthers, and they're like, yeah, I already know about all this stuff.
And they know who my dad was too.
Wow.
Some of their parents. So some of them are, flat earthers or biblical cosmologists, and we got some cool stuff too in the shop of biblical cosmology, that cool new tribute I did for my dad that I think you guys would like. But
I mean, that's the safest term is biblical cosmology. Because I mean, truly, unless you have an eyewitness experience where you yourself fly up in one of these rockets and look down and you can see for yourself, I mean, we aren't speaking from a place of physical experience. We're only speaking based on the experiments we can do. And what we can tell as plebeian people, not one of the 600 people that have been allowed to in space programs go up above low Earth orbit. I think there was only 24 people that went past low Earth orbit and actually went on a journey towards the moon during the Apollo missions. And of those people, like, easily they could have all sworn an oath of secrecy to not expose the truth of these programs. So, like, when you see inconsistencies like, hey, how were we able to live stream the Apollo missions, but we're not able to do that in 2022, then it makes you scratch your head and be like, well, it is kind of strange. It is kind of like, well, what's up here?
Let me ask you this. Last time I was in Galveston, we went right through Houston, and we were looking up, like, going to the NASA place, and, like, kind of me and Lindsay kind of making fun of everything. But then I saw a thing that said, have breakfast with an astronaut, a real astronaut. And I was like, this would be perfect to film and put on Skiba News Nation. I think me and you should go and film breakfast with an astronaut, because you can ask him whatever you want. Wouldn't that be, like, mind-blowing?
I mean, I think that would be real. I so much wish that Rob had done that before he passed away.
I don't think they had it back then. But it's like a new thing to do.
I definitely think that would be an interesting conversation.
Yeah.
And it makes me wonder if they would get heated and storm off. Because a lot of those...
We definitely have to have some hidden cameras because, we don't want them to know that they're being filmed, but...
Kind of like a Project Veritas undercover interview. Oh, man.
We'll meet with you outside of the bar, and I'll tell you what's really going on. Okay.
Oh, man, yeah. That would be cool.
If given the opportunity to go to space, would you, like, if somehow you won, like, a lottery and they said you could go to space, would you go?
The problem is a lot of those excursions to space are not even to actual space. No. They're to low Earth altitude. Like, they're basically to 130,000 feet.
It's like going up to the Seattle Space Needle.
Exactly.
It's just higher up.
And the planes, well, the way that they kind of mimic like the aspect of not having gravity is the planes go on a steep incline and then they dive, and it mimics weightlessness in space. And yet, like I said, the highest people are apparently those right now that are on the International Space Station, and that's 250,000 something feet up in the air. And yet, guys like Felix Baumgartner, who went 127,000 feet for that Red Bull jump.
Yeah.
There's like guys like Neil deGrasse Tyson, who's like the scientism king or whatever, coming out and saying, you can't even see the curvature at 127,000 feet. So all of these like Space Needle programs where they're sending people up to experience going to outer space, they're not even going high enough to see curvature according to their estimates. And it's just like,
they keep changing the rules, it sounds like.
so even if I did go to space and I was on one of those flights,
yeah,
I definitely enjoy the whole like, ooh, you know, I'm on a diving plane, I'm weightless. That'd be cool.
No, I mean, like if you could go up to the space station,
I don't know, man. I'd be very nervous.
I'd be too scared because
I'd be a little like,
I don't even like roller coasters.
They're gonna take me out, man.
I get scared just being around a roller coaster. It gives me anxiety.
Well, here's like, you know, I'll throw the line out to Elon Musk. You know, we'll get a tour of SpaceX and
yeah. Elon, if you're watching.
Anyways, they take your imagination to space so they can take your soul to hell. This goes straight to kind of the, you know, that's why it's called the soul lure system. Wow.
You know, I've never noticed about the snake tongue thing until somebody pointed it out to me, because I was creating that. I don't know if you've seen my flat earth thing that is like a knockoff. It's trying to make fun of the NASA logo, and then the biblical cosmology is the same way. So I made it to where that tongue wasn't in it, but I couldn't see it until that photo, because I'm dyslexic. So some things I see differently than other people, but I had no idea that it was like that.
Yeah, I mean, it does look like a snake tongue.
Hidden symbology.
And hey, I mean,
it's like the medical system, two snakes, you know?
We have this one more picture here, and you can see that the term NASA in Hebrew means to deceive. And I don't know about you, but if I've been lied to once, it makes it very hard for me to put faith and trust in somebody again. Mm-hmm. And we absolutely know that there have been lies about the original moon program, the Apollo missions. There's been lies about the technology used. There's been lies about the imagery that were presented of the Earth. These things have been presented to us as 100% scientific, proven, real. And with a little bit of investigation, you can discover that there is a good number of lies that are very widely provable as deceptions. And so that makes me think, like, sure, you know, I've seen things like the SpaceX satellite line go across the sky. I've seen dots go across the night sky, and I can't fully speak to say, like, oh, I think these are complete fake, you know, things, that satellites aren't real or whatever, because I have seen things. But any explanation, any program that comes from NASA, who to me in the past has been a proven liar, makes me in the future very skeptical of anything they present and any agenda they push through with their modern iteration of the space program race.
Yeah. Founded by a Nazi.
Founded by a Nazi.
Werner von Braun.
What episode was that? We should tell people to go check that out. Werner von Braun's breakdown.
I don't know. Opa, do you know?
We did cover that in one of our episodes.
Yeah, and we do have a clip. And on Patreon, I know I have the history clip of the Werner von Braun thing. The song is actually public domain, by the way, so anybody can use it, which is kind of cool. But
cool.
he was making fun of it way back then, which is crazy.
All right, so that covers the space topic for today. Now, back to globalist control and something pretty alarming that recently was implemented at a McDonald's. Check this video out.
All righty, we are at McDonald's in the big fashion mall. And here's what happens. When you want to place your order on this screen over here, the way it works is like this. You click English, and now it says, in order to proceed with the order, you must confirm that you have a valid green certificate at the top of your own. So let's say you don't have one, you click don't have. Look at that, it blanks out the screen. So basically, if you don't have a green pass, they will not give you food at McDonald's in Beit Shemesh. That's where we're at. Welcome to Israel.
Wow.
2022.
So the significance of what we just watched there is, of course, this is a clip from Israel, where a lot of the early implementation of some of the protocols and mandates and experimentation, I mean, like 80% of their population was kind of coerced into that big experiment last few years. But we can see here that one of the elements of the big experiment was that if you participated, you get a green card. You get your mark of the beast that you can now go to McDonald's and eat with. And now in 2022, if you don't have a green pass, you can't get food. And
that's crazy.
This is right alongside, scriptures that are very alarming, right? That say if, somebody doesn't have the mark, the name, or the number of the name, they are not permitted to buy or sell. And that's what the prophetic scriptures talk about with the mark of the beast. And, we can see the precursors of this being played out on the world stage with this topic of the big medical experiment. If you didn't participate, if you didn't bend over for the doctors to insert their experiment into your body, then guess what? You can't eat. You can't participate in society.
Or at a hospital, they will treat you like you're a second-class citizen.
Oh yeah, terrible. All right, so this is going to go into our next news segment, which it's going to cover some pretty alarming stuff regarding the medical experiment, and we're going to have to heavily censor this as we do. But let's go ahead and show the first video, which is a trailer, I believe, for a film that was recently released called Died Suddenly, or forgive me, I'm not referring to it, maybe
Died Off
Suddenly,
Orchestrated Died Off.
Yeah, so this first video here is a trailer for a recent film that was released.
Why do we never believe them?
Georgia Guidestones right there.
These people know. These people know.
Who knows?
The governments know. This has been well planned. This is Agenda 2030. This is the Great Reset.
Somebody mentioned to go onto Google and go into the news section and then type in "died suddenly."
I think that's the name of this documentary.
Lo and behold, here's a whole listing of people, of articles, of people within that last week who died suddenly. Older people, but a lot of younger people around the world.
And then you find out they were vaccinated. And so it's like, okay, so it's the might be causing this.
Most people don't want to know what's in the
But yet when we open it almost 2 years into this, we find that it still says intentionally blank.
In fact, nobody wants to know what's in the because, look, if people understood what was in the they'd go apeshit.
It's just there's something different about the blood. Something's causing this, and something needs to be said. Somebody needs to look into it. I talked to other embalmers that have 30, 40, even 50 years of experience. Have you guys ever seen this stuff before? And the answer was always, I've never seen anything like it.
Why is Bill Gates involved in public health? And why does public health spend the first part telling you how the world is overpopulating?
And at first glance, this is a bit scary.
U.S. life insurance companies have reported an overwhelming and unexplainable increase in all-cause deaths among 18 to 49-year-olds.
That's a 12 sigma event. 1 in 800 years, 12 standard deviations above the mean.
No one's even calculated that. It's apocalyptic.
I thought he was protected with that.
There's a huge part of me that feels a responsibility for everything that's happened. I'm so sorry.
The doctor after a while came out and said, your son's dead, you can go home now.
Who knows? Young people are dying these days.
To Mr. Hirschman, this is different. This isn't normal, is it? And he said, absolutely not.
The dead can't speak for themselves, so therefore I have to speak for them.
We're connecting dots here. There's no way that type of obstruction would not cause stroke, heart failure.
My sister died. She was 58, and she died suddenly on Friday of a heart attack.
They will do with you what they feel like doing to you. It's the new bullet. It's the new missile. It's the new form of warfare.
I wanted people to understand that we're in a 5th generation warfare for the heart and the mind.
This is the greatest orchestrated die-off in the history of the world.
That's the name of the movie there.
What did it say?
Died suddenly.
Okay.
There's most definitely evil in this world, and evil like we could not possibly imagine.
Reminds me of the Greatest Reset.
Yeah.
Which, you know, I will be putting that for our Patreons on Patreon, the Greatest Reset, so that they'll be able to see it.
Yeah,
so I think that's important.
Wow, just almost got to take a second to comprehend
breathe a little bit.
Some of that. I mean, one of the phrases was the 5th generation of warfare over the hearts and minds of the people, and some of that footage of people just collapsing. Man, it's so heartbreaking. And one of the greatest recent alleged causes of death in the Western world is unknown, or sudden adult death syndrome, right?
Yeah.
And of course we know that there's somebody that's got a big dollar bill that's covering it all up, and they are banning people on YouTube and on Facebook, and the government is painting you as a semi kind of terrorist if you speak against the pharmaceutical industry, and that's why the censorship's coming down. And you know, I'm just glad that there's people out there that are making documentaries, and I know we're doing our part. We're trying to get the word out and warn, because it's not that we can really do anything about the past now, but what we can do is prepare for the future, and we can see that there's a cycle that happens. Is when they get away with something, they usually come back and try it again, and all we can do is trumpet the alarm, right?
Yeah, well, those that don't know history are doomed to repeat it.
Yes.
So that is recent history, you know, that whole topic. So if we don't know about it, I mean, we're doomed.
That's true. Let's go ahead and show this next video. It's just goes right along with this topic.
That's not serious.
Australia is currently facing its 4th wave of COVID, with there no longer being a requirement to isolate when positive. But when it comes to boarding cruise ships, there are still very strict rules. You need to have a negative test and be double vaccinated.
Oh, okay. So hang on. How the heck did 800 people get COVID when they had a negative test and were double?
So how this outbreak started remains a mystery.
You know why it's a mystery? Because it's bullshit.
True statement.
Of course, you know, that covering a recent outbreak of some people on a cruise ship. But this leads us to another very serious topic, which is the association of refusing to participate in the medical experiment, and the association of that mindset with mental illness. So let's watch this next video.
Hello. I'm laying in my bunk at work. I'm tired. It's been I'm on my 3rd day now. 3rd 24-hour shift. I've tried to tell you all in the past that as a paramedic, I can go into your home if called and remove your rights if we believe you're a threat to yourself or others. If a doctor or someone calls in your family and says they believe that something's wrong and you're a threat, we can go over there with the police department and fire, and we can ask you certain questions. If you don't answer those questions properly, based on the current rules, we can take you into a sort of custody, or the police can take you into custody. And if you don't want to go willingly, we can medicate you. We can restrain you physically or sedate you and take you in. So when I hear things like this occurring, it worries me. God bless.
And you've talked about how even they recommend, you know, perhaps psychiatric medication or something for people that don't want to take it.
So this has come out recently out of the College of Physicians and Surgeons of Ontario. The college sent out a letter or a memo to all the doctors in Ontario suggesting to them, now so far they're not mandating it, they're just suggesting it, that any of their unvaccinated patients, that they should consider that they have a mental problem and that they should be put on psychiatric medication.
Wow. So that is now the video that I wanted to call back. I think the picture was with Justin Trudeau, and just this premise that if you don't participate, you can be labeled as mentally ill, at least in Canada. I mean, do you feel mentally ill, Jeremiah?
I feel great. I feel good not being brainwashed. I'll tell you that.
Absolutely. I mean, just the thought that this is coming down the chute, and I know we see a lot of progressive policies are started in places like Australia, Canada, Israel, and is this going to come to the Americas? You know, to the United States? I don't know, but
I hope not.
It is something to pay attention to, that they are now associating your mental stability with your willingness to participate in state-backed pharmaceutical money-grabbing schemes to experiment on mankind.
Yep.
It's like, oh, man. So let's go ahead and show our next video here, and this is tied to the excess mortality rate that has happened in this past year.
So some people were fine, a lot of people we don't know, some people are obviously harmed. More people are becoming aware of it as they see it in their environment with family members and friends. More people are aware of the acute increase in excess mortality across the world. I know Ed Dowd and the insurance groups have been very on to that. You look at the country of Iceland, small country, 350,000-ish people, one of the most compliant nations in terms of the in July, just a few months ago, their excess mortality rate above 5-year average was 56%. Astronomical. So this
56% above normal.
Above normal. Yep. So you know we have these ups and downs in mortality every year. These are charts and graphs that actuaries keep. In the month of July, if you look, 3 years ago, here's your average death rate, 56% above that. Now, Portugal, 30-ish% above average, Spain, 30-ish% above average, a couple of other European nations, 10, 12, 15% above average. And these are in young, healthy cohorts. And that's what's interesting. It's not just, oh gosh, well, old people die. Of course they do. All of us are going to. But these are people in the prime of their life. If you look at the uptick in the rates of data, every day I get a colleague, oh, got another one. Another friend passed away, another person lost their 15-year-old, someone just lost their 9-year-old, someone just lost their 40-year-old dad, etc. And then my question is, when did they get their most recent shot? And those pathways of harm that we've been discussing, that's where the elephant in the room is the elephant in the room. And this is, again, the call to action is every coroner, every medical examiner needs to request a spike in a nucleocapsid stain on every organ in the body of every young deceased person. Simple as that.
So just the excess mortality of sudden adult death syndrome and young people who are collapsing, just like we saw in that trailer for that video, is alarming. And we need to continue to warn people, hey, they're going to double down. And we're actually entering into, flu season as we enter into the colder months of the year here in the West. And, they are setting up, places to receive your... It is so encompassing in the past 2 years of how they've just brainwashed all of our friends, our family, that it seems redundant covering this so often, but I also understand how important it is,
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Well, we have one final video on this particular topic and then our final coverage regarding worker shortage coming in the future. So let's watch this kind of hilarious video on what is the cause for all this sudden mortality.
Did you know that the leading cause of death in Alberta in 2021 is cause unknown? That's weird. You would think in this day and age that we'd be able to figure something like that out, huh? All our technological advancements. But seriously, I think if we just sat down and we put our heads together, you know, we could come up with some ideas, at least point ourselves in the right direction. You and I will brainstorm this. You go ahead and just tell me what comes off the top of your dome. I'll jot it down and we'll figure it out. I could take a jab at it, but I would just be, you know, shooting in the dark. It's got to be hard on all these doctors. I mean, they're really looking for a needle in a haystack. What could it be? Seriously, like, what happened in 2021 that didn't happen in 2020? I'll never figure it out. I have no clue. Who knows? Maybe once we figure out this mystery, we'll figure out what finally causes SIDS.
Uh-oh. Oh.
That's hilarious.
And unfortunately, because of the censorship, that's now how we are forced to communicate.
Yep.
So
like little sign language, subtle sign language, and subtle, you know, the V.
Yeah.
How we say it, the hokey pokey.
Yeah. It's just ridiculous how we have to play by these new rules to just participate in the system of media exchange. But I love that little skit there.
That's funny.
Anyways, to move on from this topic, I know we've hammered the dead horse quite literally many, many times in our previous episodes and in this episode, but check out this picture here. This is from December 21. The CDC says if we all do the hokey pokey, we can turn this thing around. Oh, you don't say. Let's go to this next picture. I heard his parents didn't get the jab way back in 2022. What a weirdo. Oh, man. So that's what it's going to be like in the future for, you know, all of our kids that come out looking normal, for us unparticipating peoples. And our final photo, the Boston University researchers create a new COVID variant that has killed 80% of the mice infected during the experiment. And so this is the kind of article that comes out, the fear-mongering, that during the next wave of whatever future bug comes out on the world scene, they're going to be referring to experiments like this to convince the population in any future medical experiments to participate all the more. I mean, imagine if there's a much higher death rate, how much, you know, it's not a 0.1%, it's a, you know, a 5%, or a 20%. These are actual pandemics. And yet when that comes on the world scene, are you going to have the resolve to still not participate in something that is also going to cause extreme adverse effects, be, you know, genetically modifying to your body? You know, that's the question, because a lot of these fear-mongering articles really are being used to kind of precondition people to be like, hey, guess what?
Propaganda.
Are you ready next time to play ball? Because people aren't playing ball this time, and we're dogmatically condemning them as a second-class member of society. Well, next time, could it be legal repercussions? Could it be, you know, you're putting in an internment camp like those people in Australia were who didn't participate? Could it be death? Is it that scary of a bug that you are now condemned to be eradicated as a rodent who's not participating in the groupthink medical experiment? And all of these things come hand in hand with that whole end times scenario of a mark of the beast, and those who didn't participate in the system losing their heads for the sake of their faith, standing on their belief that, you know, we don't need to participate in your modification of humanity. We're going to trust in the Most High to protect our health, protect our lives. You know, even though you're the world power, you're the new God of this world, telling us in your white lab coat that we have to do this, this, and this, or we don't get to eat McDonald's. Not that you should be eating McDonald's anyways. I don't know. But anyways, yeah, so just wanted to share that mindset. And we have one final very important news topic to talk about, which is coming shortage in workers for a variety of industries, and it's actually presented by. Yeah, you ever seen that Dirty Jobs Micro guy?
Well, he's a Fox News affiliate.
Yeah, he actually is the one who kind of breaks down why this is going to be happening in the near future of people that not only don't have the skill to work, but don't have the desire to go to work, and how it's going to affect a lot of industries. So let's check this last video out.
Still got 7 million people, able-bodied men, sitting out the entire workforce.
Right.
And what we were saying during the break, these big companies now in Silicon Valley, they're going to start laying people off.
Amazon.
They're going to lay people off, and those people are not going to have the necessary skills to fill the current openings. So now it is, in my view, we went from a skills gap to a will gap, and now we're going to come back to a skill gap and a will gap. We're going to have lots of unemployed people who aren't trained for the jobs that exist, and we're going to have lots of people who could step into those jobs who, for whatever reason, have elected not to.
So, Mike, that is in the big picture is people aren't working, and people are frustrated they can't hire. I thought things were getting marginally better. I don't walk into a place and say, how's it going? What's the workforce like? Can you hire people? I do notice I'm getting more people saying I can hire people. Not a lot, but more. But you pulled up one clip, and we sent it in to bring up. Can you tell me what clip we're going to see?
I get hundreds of these a week. This one happened to be sent to me by Gary Sinise, who just said, Mike, can you talk to this guy? Can you do something? And what you're about to hear is just one contractor on one job who's trying to build a couple of houses who showed up for the third day in a row, and none of his men showed up to work. None of them. Here he is.
I'm 3 weeks into a job, 3 days in a row. Not one showed up for work. I don't care if I pay them 15. I don't give a if I give them 25 or 40. People do not want to work. I don't bitch. I don't complain. I got a fully stocked trailer sitting over there with every tool that you can possibly imagine. I buy tools for them. They either have no driver's license, 20 minutes too far to drive. I've even heard the excuse, well, I've got to go home and plan a baby shower from a grown-ass man. I've worked all over the United States. I've done every kind of construction, remodeling, commercial, residential there is. And this is the worst I've ever seen it.
So there it is, right? Now, you can call it anecdotal. You can look at one guy having a bad day and say, well, try this, try that. I get hundreds of these every week. I know a lot of people in construction, and they've all been saying the same thing for the last 4 years. They just simply can't find people who are willing to show up early, stay late, and learn a skill that's in demand, period. And now we're starting to see how that trickles down and into the rest of the economy and what it means for anybody who, never mind being a plumber, I'm talking about people who need a plumber, who need an electrician, me and you, people who share our addiction to smooth roads and affordable energy and indoor plumbing and all of these things, right? This is the stuff that's starting to fray. And, man, if it doesn't get your attention, then you're not paying attention.
So one of the guys you said hello to yesterday when you were going into the elevator, we were coming out. He has a pool company called Built Right Pools.
Mm-hmm.
He so for 25 years, he literally gets in there. He'll dig him out. That's why he's strong as iron. He doesn't need to hit the gym, but he does anyway. And Steve says to me, I'm doing all my own pool closings this year. I cannot find anybody.
Yeah.
And, he's young enough to be able to do it, but in 15 years, who knows? His kids can't find anybody.
Dude,
and he says he'll pay good. And he'll say, I don't need to make that much profit. But I'm making more money now, but I'm working.
Introduce me to him again because the first episode of Dirty Jobs is coming back in December, is me down here in Florida with a father and son pool team. And these two do the work of like 4. And I mean, we clean up the worst looking pool I've ever seen. This pool hadn't been cleaned in 17 years. But these two guys doing it together. They don't cheat. They make a great living. It's backbreaking, but we laughed the whole day. And I just
So you got in there?
Oh, of course.
Yeah.
No, you have to get in there. There's no shortcuts in this.
Yeah.
But, the dad is north of 60. And he's bent over, swinging axes and stuff, And here's the math that ought to frighten your listeners more than anything else. Every single year, for 5 people who retire in the skilled trades, 2 replace them. 5 out, 2 in. It's been that way for 15 years. 5 out, 2 in. This is just math.
Right.
It's just math.
So I'm going to introduce my other friend who's coming this weekend, very patriotic, Mike Ragusa. And I think I might have told you about him. They had a family plumbing business, and now he's flitted out on his own. And he is 58 now, and is pretty sore, pretty beat up, his hips, his back, and everything. But he says that they can't find plumbers. Like he can't possibly do all the work that's on his voicemail.
There's no way. There's no way. I'm telling you, this story is everywhere, and it's not been covered. It's not being covered because people are still stuck with the idea that, wait, if people are out of work, it's because there's not enough opportunity.
Right.
And it's just the wrong way to think about it.
Wow. So
that is crazy.
To me, that's a sign of the coming collapse of our society as we know it, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely. Yep.
I mean, if there's not people building buildings and cleaning toilets and and doing all the dirty jobs like Mike Rowe did, we're gonna.
I mean, and some of them aren't even dirty, like the building. That's not dirty.
Construction.
Yeah, that's. I mean, manual labor.
It's a high demand, but that's the kind of work that it takes to keep a society afloat.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, people aren't interested in doing it. That was our last video of Mike Rowe and the dirty jobs. That was our last little news topic I wanted to cover, and just the lack of people being willing to work, and how it's a sign of collapse of society as we know it. So,
thank you for sharing. Thank you for being here in the studio.
Yeah, man.
It's a lot easier. It flows a lot better because there's not like a little delay.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was great, man. I appreciate it.
I'm so happy to be here in person. I apologize for all the super depressing kind of
No, I mean,
news.
we all need to know this. We all need to be aware.
I mean, it's how you're a watchman, right? But hey, we got some funny memes later on, and we're about to get some great Opus Corner out here.
Yep. So it's time for an all-new Opus Corner. Take it away, Opa.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
It's Opus Corner Day. It's Opus Corner Day. On a very windy day, a rabbi was walking along when a strong gust of wind blew his hat off his head. The rabbi ran after the hat, but the wind was too strong. It kept blowing his hat farther and farther away. A non-Jewish young man, seeing what had happened, ran after the hat, caught it, and gave it back to the rabbi. The rabbi was so grateful, he gave the young man $20 and blessed him. The young man was so excited that he decided to go to the racetrack. And with the rabbi's blessing, he decided to check the program and place the entire $20 on a horse. After the races, he went home and recounted his very exciting day to his father. I arrived at the 5th race and looked at the program. I saw this horse named Top Hat was running. The odds on this horse were 100 to 1. But since I received the rabbi's blessing, I bet the entire $20 on Top Hat. And guess what? He won! In the next race, there was a horse named Bowler at 30 to 1. So I bet the entire amount of my winnings on him. And guess what? I won again! So, did you bring the money home? Asked the father. No, said the son. I lost it all in the last race. There was a horse named Chateau that was heavily favored, so I bet everything on him. And since Chateau means hat in French, I figured he was a sure thing. You fool, said the father. Hat in French is chapeau, not chateau. Sighing to himself, the father then asked, So, who did win the race? A real long shot, said the son. Some Spanish horse named Sombrero.
Oh, man.
A man walks into an antique store and starts looking around. Suddenly, he gazes upon the most stunning bronze statue of a Siamese cat. He asks the store owner how much he wants for the statue. The store owner replies, It's $200 for the statue and $2,000 for the story that goes with it. The man replies, I don't really care about the story, but I do want the statue. As the man is paying for the statue, the shop owner says, All right, but I guarantee you'll be back for the story. The man walks out of the shop and starts down the street carrying the cat statue. When he comes to the crosswalk, he happens to glance behind him and sees 3 or 4 cats sitting about 10 feet away, looking at him. He shrugs it off and crosses when the light changes. He goes several more blocks, and at another crosswalk, looks behind himself again. This time there are about 30 cats sitting there looking at him. The man starts to get a little nervous and picks up his pace when the light changes. By the time the man reaches the pier at the end of the street, he has now been running for several blocks. He was running because every time he turned around, there were more and more cats behind him. He looked like the Pied Piper. When he got to the end of the pier, turned around once more, and saw at least 2,000 cats sitting there looking at him. There were so many cats, there was no way to get off the pier without going through them, and he knew there was no way he was going to do that. In a panic, he turned toward the water and heaved the statue as far as he could. Amazingly, all of the cats ran past him and jumped into the water after the statue and never came out. The man, still shaking from his ordeal, immediately started running back to the shop. As he burst through the door, the shop owner saw him and said, "I told you you'd be back for the story." "Huh, to heck with the story," gasped the man. "Do you have a statue of a politician?" And now for the funnies.
That laugh.
Roscoe, June 2nd, 1979, caught his own tail. Would you like a box for the rest of your meal? That would be great. Clink. No, Igor, not Phillips head. Flathead. Flathead. Bring me the flathead. Before paper and scissors. Dang. Try it again. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
Rock.
The gingerbread house really wasn't bringing them in anymore. Free Wi-Fi.
Oh, man. It's so true.
Could we have some help here, please? We don't understand these price tags.
Some morgue.
Thomas Sullivan, a blacksmith who attended the original Thanksgiving dinner, is generally credited as being the first person to stick olives on all his fingers. Moses as a kid. It was foolish for Russell to approach the hornet's nest in the first place, but his timing was particularly bad. Angry hour, 4 to 5 p.m. Yep, there it is. It's definitely a boy.
What?
Cat Hotel. We've got a cardboard box for $30, a laundry basket for $50, or the top of the refrigerator, our penthouse, for $125.
My cat's the $50 one.
Right, I'm ready to stand up now. Cat!
It's a good idea.
All the other reindeer used to laugh and called him names.
Rudolph, what have you done?
We caught him exercising at a rest stop. Honey, I want to thank you for being so attentive tonight and... Wait a minute.
Oh, that's freaky looking.
I'm getting really tired of your dog doing his business on my lawn. Lemonade, 50 cents. Papa, we're out of sandpaper again.
What does Chuck Norris use for toilet paper? Razor blades.
Spider in the shower. Spider in the shower. Drama, drama, drama. The Old West. The problem with memory foam mattresses. Ugh, you again? This call may be recorded, set to music, and released on our own label where we retain all rights. How can I help you today?
That's true.
Semi-desperados. Throw down that strong box or I'll blow your head off. Well, I'll wing you for sure. Okay, maybe I'll just climb up there and give you a Dutch rub. The mosquito net is working. Wait, I didn't put up a mosquito net. Technically, he's right, Dan. It says right here in the contract, customer may pay off loan with a single balloon payment. Lord, we thank thee.
Oh, the chickens are... Poor guy.
Shout out to ATM Fees for making me buy my own money. And that concludes Opus Corner again.
Mein Hut, der hat 3 Ecken. 3 Ecken hat mein Hut. Und hat nicht 3 Ecken, dann ist es nicht mein Hut.
Opus Corner is now available on my own YouTube channel. Like, share, and subscribe.
Wow, but that was great. Super
Yeah.
funny. I love the cat ones.
There's some
as
good ones
always.
on that one for sure.
Yeah. All right. Well, hope you enjoyed Opus Corner. It's time for some history. All right, so I let the people vote on YouTube, and you guys chose Harry Houdini. Okay, so this one is a little bit different because when most people think about Harry Houdini, they think of a magician or, you know, like they consider him in the dark, kind of dark and mysterious and black magic and all that, but that's not the case. He was an illusionist who made his money being a daredevil, kind of like Evel Knievel. So he was way ahead of his time in that sense. So I want to give you a little bit of a backstory before I really get into it with this first clip.
Suspended from a building, trapped in a straitjacket, chained in a box underwater, bound and shackled, master of illusion Harry Houdini always found a way to escape. With all his skills, strength, and self-confidence, Houdini seemed invulnerable, but he found out that no one could trick death. We'll relive the tragic mishap when Houdini's fearlessness proved fatal.
One young man said, "You mean you could withstand a punch in your stomach with all my force?" And the young man struck him.
And we'll reveal why no one dared underestimate the power of Houdini.
He said that if there was any way to communicate after death, he would find it.
Houdini was born Eric Weiss in Budapest on March 24, 1874. His poverty-stricken family immigrated to the United States when Houdini was 4 years old.
Houdini had a difficult childhood. I mean, his father was an unemployed rabbi. He had come to America and tried to get work in Appleton, Wisconsin. He had barely enough money for food and clothing.
The rabbi and his wife Cecilia struggled to support their 7 children. Young Houdini did what he could to help earn money. In search of a better life, the Weiss clan moved to Brooklyn, New York in 1887. There, the 13-year-old Houdini discovered his true calling.
His mother gave him a magic set when he was, I don't remember, 10 years old or something, as a reward for bringing money into the house. By the time he was 16, he was already doing magic, and by the time he was 18 or so, he was performing professionally.
The first feat for Eri Weiss was to come up with a catchy name. He adopted the last name of French magician Robert Houdin and Americanized Eri to Harry. And presto changeo, Harry Houdini was created.
He started out as a pretty traditional magician in the vaudeville circuit and, performing at dime museums and theaters with other acts as part of a 10-act bill.
While performing at Coney Island, 20-year-old Harry met a young singer, 18-year-old Bess Ranner. They were married 2 weeks later on June 22nd, 1894.
He really caught on to what attracted the public's attention. He started something called a challenge act, and he would take handcuffs to the local police station or to the local newspaper office and have the officials from that institution bind him, and then he would of course escape every time.
He didn't deal with the idea of magic at all. He dealt with the idea of trickery, of stunts.
Celebrated magician Lance Burton.
Houdini invented the whole idea, I think, of being an escape artist. He's the one that really made that into a big deal. I think he did that by hooking into people's emotions. It's not just a guy going in a box and then getting out of the box. It was a guy risking his life.
By 1899, the tricks of 25-year-old Houdini became even more daring and bizarre.
He went to an insane asylum, and he was allowed to watch an inmate in the asylum struggling inside a straitjacket, and he got the idea that it would make a good escape.
He was doing the straitjacket escape in a show, and he had this crazy idea of, why don't we hang Houdini upside down, downtown, out of a window? And thousands and thousands of people will gather around and watch this nut hanging upside down trying to get out of a straitjacket.
Crowds obviously loved Houdini. I mean, from newspaper accounts that we have, the applause was always thunderous and people shouted and waved their hats.
Sometimes even Houdini thought he needed a miracle to survive.
His tricks always worked. On the other hand, he was always getting beaten up. I mean, he was always getting mangled. He broke everything, he fractured everything, he ruptured everything. Physically, he was, just tremendous punishment.
But no amount of physical pain could have prepared 39-year-old Houdini for the ultimate heartache. In 1913, Houdini's beloved mother Cecilia passed away.
In his head, I think Houdini was always performing for his mother. I mean, that was really the audience. She was the one that he really wanted to mystify and captivate and please. And her death was very, very, very tough for him.
Houdini couldn't bear to let his mother go.
He started attending seances and visiting mediums in a sincere effort to contact his mother and see if there was any way to communicate with her after her death.
Harry Houdini desperately wanted to unlock the gate between here and the hereafter. But could Houdini find a way to contact the dead? How the King of Illusion battled psychic phonies, and why even the great Houdini could not escape his tragic fate.
So he started, that's about the time where spiritualists and spiritualism was kind of a big thing here in America. And the definition of that is a person who believes that the spirit of which a dead can communicate with the living, which I'm pretty sure the Bible is pretty clear about not doing. But in this second clip I'm about to show you might blow your mind about what he says about going to these seances and how he ended up dying as a result of exposing this exact thing. So let's play that second clip.
But in 1913, he couldn't break out of the depression caused by his mother's death. Houdini attended countless seances hoping to communicate with his dearly departed mom. By the early 20s, Houdini realized that the spiritual advisors he consulted were frauds. Houdini realized that the spiritual advisors he consulted were frauds.
He went to the spiritualists because he wanted to contact his mother, and he was very, very hurt and mad because he discovered all these spiritualists he went to were using magician's tricks.
Houdini thought that they were wicked. They would prey on poor people to hear the voices, spend their last dollar.
Because he was a magician, he recognized the techniques that these mediums were using to fool people into thinking that there indeed was some contact from their dead relatives. He began a crusade, there's really no other word for it, to debunk mediums and spiritualists.
Houdini attended seances in disguise. Once he figured out the deception, he'd reveal his true identity and expose the scam. Beginning in 1924, 50-year-old Houdini made his findings public.
He went around the country lecturing against the spiritualists, and he gave an hour demonstration, show how they were able to make trumpets blow and so on.
He spent over $1 million exposing spiritualists.
His famous story is that he was in his dressing room in Montreal, and a student asked him, "Can I punch you in the stomach?"
One young man said, "You mean you could withstand a punch in your stomach with all my force?" And Houdini nodded, and the young man struck him without any preparation or telling him, and it burst his appendix.
But that punch to the gut no doubt made a bad situation worse. With his wife Bess and his brother Houdini at his bedside, Houdini took his final bow.
A week after he had been punched in the stomach, he passed away. He simply said that he couldn't stand the pain anymore, he couldn't take it anymore.
He died in his brother's arms on October 31st when he finally gave up.
He said to Houdini, "I have to give up," and he died.
Come on, this is Harry Houdini we're talking about. And Houdini himself said if it was possible to communicate from beyond, he'd be the guy to find a way. I'm going to tell you the secret code Houdini devised to prove there's life after death. Houdini's widow, Bess, also held on to the hope that if it was at all possible, her husband of 31 years would contact her from beyond the grave.
After Houdini's death, Bess Houdini held a seance for 10 years running, starting in Hollywood, trying to see whether she could get back in touch with Houdini.
They set up a code before he died to try to communicate with each other.
Bess and Harry agreed their secret code would be Rosabelle Believe, but Bess learned from Houdini himself to be skeptical. Finally, in 1936, after 10 years of attending seances, Bess acknowledged that Houdini was gone for good.
So in life and in death, Houdini was determined to expose these frauds for who they really were. And there's a conspiracy behind who the guy that punched him in the stomach was working for. And I've seen a couple docuseries and a couple documentaries that make it pretty clear that whoever the person was that hit him was somehow in connection with all these big-time spiritualists. And they wanted to take him down because he was exposing how they made their money. He was exposing everything. He went as far as to go to Congress and beg them to make it illegal to be a practicing spiritualist and to take people's money, because he saw that they were taking advantage of widows and of people that what word am I looking for?
People looking to connect with their loved ones that didn't have much money left, and they give them these promises of being able to speak to them, and they rip them off.
Yep. Well, this third clip, I think it might blow your mind, Jake. So let's play that third clip.
As far as contemporary movements go, spiritualism is generally agreed as having been popularized in earnest by the Fox sisters in 1848 after they supposedly channeled a spirit right before their neighbors' eyes from right within the comfort of their upstate New York home. Word quickly spread about the girls' feat, paving the way for a sort of spiritualist craze at the time. This is where a lot of classic iconography of spirit communication comes from, especially the more theatrical things like seances while gathered around a table, for example. Just over a decade later, spirit photography came onto the scene and really has not gone away ever since. Needless to say, people were dabbling in all manner of new attempts to unravel the mysteries of the afterlife, and it wasn't limited to just everyday citizens. According to WhiteHouseHistory.org, First Lady Mary Todd Lincoln practiced spiritualism, first doing so after the death of her second youngest son in 1862, when the boy was just 11 years old. Eventually, Mary would hold seances in the Red Room of the White House, some of which were attended by none other than President Abraham Lincoln himself. While probably the most noteworthy practitioners of spiritualism in this era, the Lincolns were far from the only prominent names on that roster. Sir Arthur Conan Doyle was an outspoken advocate for spiritualism, and while not necessarily sold on spiritualist methods, Thomas Edison even joined the fold at one point with his attempt at creating a telephone that could contact those on the other side. Speaking of the other side, spiritualism had also had its fair share of critics, the most notable of which probably being Harry Houdini.
Boom.
While most people know of Houdini for his work as a magician and escape artist, he also spent a considerable amount of energy debunking fraudulent mediums, even going as far as to testify in front of Congress hoping to get fortune-telling banned in Washington, D.C.
So this is something called
stories with
spiritism.
perplexing details leave us wanting
so it's
more.
a little bit different.
To get to the bottom of what truly transpired, the whole picture is sometimes just out of reach, leaving us with an incomplete narrative. One such story brings us to 1960s Brazil, where two suited men were found lifeless side by side atop a hill with no apparent signs of injury, along with raincoats, cryptic notes, and most bizarre of all, two crudely constructed lead masks in the shape of eyewear. This would later be dubbed by the media as the lead mask case, and it's been the source of wild speculation since the men were found nearly 6 decades ago. It's a tale laced with accusations of police negligence, possible third-party involvement, and even whispers about secret societies and UFO sightings. Whether this case is what it seems to be on the surface or not, the circumstances surrounding how these two men ended up on that hill are fascinating. August 17, 1966. Two close friends by the name of Miguel Jose Viana, 34, and Miguel Pereira de Cruz, 32, are about to embark on a journey together to buy a car and electronic equipment. Or at least that's what they told their wives when they packed up roughly 3 million cruzerios and set out to catch the 9 a.m. bus. Manuel and Miguel were both TV repairmen, so to their families, nothing about this trip seemed too far-fetched. The duo claimed they'd be heading all the way to Sao Paulo, some 400 miles away. Instead, however, they arrived in Niterói, just outside of Rio de Janeiro, something they'd intentionally planned on based on the bus tickets later recovered by authorities. This was at approximately 2 p.m., and over the course of the next couple hours, the men made several stops. They first visited an electronics shop, chatted with the owner, and left without making any purchases. Following this, they hopped from one store to another, buying a bottle of mineral water along with 2 raincoats to go over their suits. Later that afternoon, at about 5 p.m., a young local boy noticed the pair sitting atop Vintum Hill, but paid them no mind despite admittedly being curious given that these men were in formal attire and had donned the aforementioned raincoats. The next day, curiosity got the best of the boy, and that's when he decided to go and take a peek at the spot where he'd seen the men perched. Surprisingly, Miguel and Manuel were still there, just this time they were lying down. Assuming they were sleeping, the boy once again walked away. The boy's third encounter with the duo would by far be the most shocking. Once again in the area, the boy didn't see Manuel and Miguel, but he did smell something terrible. To his horror, the men hadn't been sleeping at all, but were in fact dead, their bodies in an advanced state of decomposition after being exposed to the elements for what at that point was over 3 days. When authorities arrived on the scene, they were greeted with far more questions than answers. The first few were obvious. What were these two doing up in the hills dressed the way they were, and how did they die, given that there were no apparent signs of injury to either corpse? Beside the bodies was the water bottle they'd purchased just before making their way up the hill, but also present were 2 extremely bizarre things in particular. The first being a pair of DIY lead masks in the shape of glasses, and the second being some notes containing basic electrical equations, and most notably, the following instructions. Also of note was the fact that Miguel was reported to have roughly 157,000 cruzerios on him, while Manuel had just 4,000. A far cry from the combined 3 million or so they supposedly started with. The pair were quickly identified, which allowed authorities to cast a wide net for their initial investigation. To many, this may have seemed like it was Manuel and Miguel's intended outcome, but based on the notes, it's not hard to come to the conclusion that the men did not intend to die on that hill. If so, what really happened? Were they robbed, set up, maybe even gotten into some kind of accident? The first step would be to find out exactly what Manuel and Miguel were trying to do atop that hill, because buying a car definitely was not it. According to accounts at the time, the bodies of both men were sent in for autopsies and examined for signs of poisoning, all of which returned negative. With science unable to draw any conclusions, the authorities began turning to the pair's friends and family, all while the media began to fuel public speculation. One local man caught wind of the story and felt that he had information important to the case. He explained to authorities that on the night of August 17th, his wife and children had been driving nearby Ventum Hill and stopped to look at what appeared to be a UFO floating above it, or at least an oval object that appeared orange in color, which had what was described as a band of fire around its edges. Soon, other locals would come forward to corroborate this sighting. Meanwhile, the police managed to gather a fair bit of interesting information regarding the two friends. This is when the pair's cover story came to light via their widows, and even more would come from the men's direct family members. According to Miguel's sister, before his departure on August 17th, he'd explained that he had some kind of mission to carry out, and an important one at that. As for what it entailed, she claims he wouldn't say. Now, it's time that one Alicio Gomez would enter the picture, a name that you're going to hear a lot throughout the duration of this episode. Gomez was described by one of the widows as being Miguel and Manuel's assistant, but now he would become a suspect. Taken into custody for allegedly providing conflicting accounts, Gomez would go on to explain that the two men were what they called scientific spiritists. He claimed they'd engage in experiments and even ran a clandestine radio station in their spare time. Gomez would also explain that the men were a part of some kind of secret society, and that most TV repair technicians were also practicing scientific spiritism. Eventually, police would lose interest in Gomez, and while Manuel's widow had claimed to have seen the two having an argument, his brother would later go on record in a 90s TV documentary, stating he didn't suspect Gomez of foul play. Either way, police were on the lookout for a possible third person. The men were found with foliage on the ground that had been neatly cut with some kind of blade, but no such tool or item was ever recovered from the scene. Also puzzling was the fact that, according to reports at the time, the note on the men didn't bear their handwriting. What's even more curious here is the fact that Manuel and Miguel aren't even the first lead mask case. In 1962, a man by the name of Hermes, also a TV repairman, was found dead atop a hill. This case, however, has been mostly lost to time and therefore lacks sufficient details to connect it to what happened in 1966. Scientific spiritism. This may sound a tad confusing since most people are used to hearing the word spiritualism, and even then the word means different things depending on who you ask. Either way, spiritism and spiritualism are not exactly the same thing, even if they very much sound like it. With such big names battling at either side of the spectrum, it's not hard to see just how widespread spiritualism had become at the time. That said, spiritualism was never a formal movement. It wasn't founded by a singular individual and codified, but spiritism was. Spiritism is considered to have gotten its start in 1857, more than a decade after the Fox sisters had thrown the US into a paranormal frenzy. More specifically, its origins hail from a book, simply called The Spirit Book, authored by French educator Allan Kardec. Kardec had also gotten caught up in the spectacle of seances and spirit communication, which led him to digging into mediumship himself, eventually birthing what he called spiritism, which he described as, quote, a science which deals with the nature, origin, and destiny of spirits, as well as their relationship with the corporeal world. Today, both spiritualism and spiritism live on in various forms all across the globe, but when it comes to spiritism in particular, there's one country that stands out from the rest, and that, of course, brings us back to Brazil. In the late 60s and 70s, spiritism experienced a surge in popularity thanks to the works of philanthropist Chico Xavier, who wrote books on the subject and even appeared on national television a number of times, setting records while doing so. Towards the end of his life, Xavier would be nominated by over 2 million people to receive the Nobel Peace Prize. Needless to say, the man was popular, and today Brazil is said to have the largest concentration of spiritists on the planet at approximately 4 million strong. Just like any idea, and with spiritualism before it, spiritism has splintered off into an infinite amount of forms that vary from follower to follower. With this in mind, we can now turn our attention back to Miguel and Manuel. A book on spiritism was found in Miguel's workshop alongside remnants of lead, the pages highlighting sections about mass, intense light, and of course, spirits. Now, this is where Manuel and Miguel really seem to apply their own flair to this. According to Gomez, the pair had long held hopes of communicating with beings on Mars, presumably what they considered to be Martian spirits. They did this through experiments, one of which would even fuel local myths of UFOs and extraterrestrial life. June 13th, 1966. Residents of Campos are witnessing what they believe to be a UFO floating above the water just offshore. Whatever this object was, it was bright. So bright, in fact, that some described it as almost blinding. After just several minutes, the object began to rise, and soon after, it exploded, the boom being so loud that it was allegedly heard from miles away. Locals in the area, and in particular fishermen who had a front row seat, claim that they saw the UFO fall into the sea. This event caused enough of a ruckus for Brazilian military intelligence to get involved, although not much details on their findings seems to have made its way to the public eye. They do mention having intercepted some kind of bizarre conversation over the radio on June 12th, but that's as much as anyone seems to know on that topic. That said, I'm sure you can already see where I'm going with this. According to Gomez, he was invited by R2-led masked men to attend an experiment in Manuel's garden, something that was also confirmed by Manuel's very own father as having taken place. Although the details are unclear, Gomez explained that the friends had created some kind of device, and we can only assume that it exploding was not part of their plan. Whatever this device was, it sounds strikingly similar to the one supposedly seen by locals at Vinton Hill on that fateful August 17th evening. It seems the men were once again trying to use a device as part of their communication with extraterrestrial spirits, only this time there didn't seem to be an explosion so much as just the device going up in flames. Whatever happened, it doesn't seem like this part of the experiment caused Manuel and Miguel's death, since again, there were no signs of injury to either body. With all of these factors in mind, really the only logical explanation we're left with is that whatever these men ingested is what killed them. But what about the autopsy and toxicology reports? Well, as you might expect, that's probably the most hotly contested part of this case. There are so many different heads talking at once that when it comes to the science here, it's not easy to figure out who to believe. We do know almost for certain that there were capsules involved, and presumably the men did take them based on the bottle of water that they bought on their way to the hill. Still, nowhere in my research did I find any reports about either the whole capsules or the remnants being found anywhere over the course of the investigation. In the 90s TV documentary, the medical examiner who worked on the case said himself that the men had been thoroughly examined for signs of poisoning, and that parts of their organs were even dissected in the process. Whether or not this is actually true, we'll never know. Some claim that the advanced state of decomposition could have gotten in the way of such things, and even more concerning is the fact that one of the medical examiners allegedly wanted his name removed from the initial report for unknown reasons. About a year after Manuel and Miguel were found, their bodies were exhumed and tested once again for toxins. With hair tests, they searched for arsenic, mercury, barium, and thallium, the results of which are arsenic 0.000041%, mercury, barium, and thallium all at 0.0001%. Experts at the Atomic Energy Institute in Sao Paulo claim that this proves scientifically that the deaths of these men were not caused by any of these specific poisons. Of course, this doesn't necessarily rule out poisoning altogether.
So I'm sorry I kind of took a left turn there, but I thought that was very important. And since you were here, I thought I would get your opinion on it. So let's start with the Harry Houdini topic. What are your thoughts about the Harry Houdini thing?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, I didn't know that about Harry, that he was on a mission to kind of expose the trickery and the wickedness behind the spiritualists at the time. Mm-hmm. And how he was trying to prove that these seances were really just scams, really. And I do kind of wonder, what was he thinking, like getting his wife to continue on doing the very thing he was against for 10 years? And I bet there's a whole bunch of occult fascination with Harry Houdini's wife carrying on those seances for 10 years. I'm kind of curious who participated in those and you know, because I know from the biblical lens, at least, there's a reason that there's a command to not communicate with the dead. Because I do think throughout history, there have been times that there is a way for people to communicate with the dead. Mm-hmm. Just off the top of my head, you know, one being Saul, the King Saul, getting the Witch of Endor to conjure up Samuel. And Samuel's like, well, guess what? You're going to be with me tomorrow. So it wasn't good news. But, you know, there's also the perspective that those who are communicating with the dead are communicating with familiar spirits, which are demonic entities that have followed those people, and they're mimicking or acting like the dead that are communicating. But, I mean, with the story with Houdini, he seems to be like outright just calling it all nonsense. And
well, I think he used his death, in my opinion, this is just my opinion, but he used his death to further expose spiritualism, to show that even 10 years after his death, he wouldn't communicate because he's gone.
Yeah.
You know, and that these people are frauds. And so that's what I got from it. But yeah, it could be so many different things. And then
the conspiracy of him being
punched
by somebody who was affected by him coming after all of the people fortune telling and talking to spirits and their crystal balls. They sent this possible assassin to punch him. That I've never heard that before. That's really interesting.
I can't remember what platform it's on, but there's a really, really good docuseries about that topic. Like the whole thing is about how Harry Houdini was murdered and who murdered him and why he was murdered. And it's all about this kind of thing. So maybe next week I can tell you kind of more about where you can find that and stuff like that. I'll have to do more research on it. I know I watched it, but I don't know where, because I watch a lot of things. Because
that happens to me all the time, man.
Well, I'm constantly researching for the show.
I can remember that video or whatever, and it's just like there's so many that scroll through. It's just so hard to recall, some of the great information you can come across.
What do you think about the lead mask?
That was really interesting. The scientific spiritualists, right? The people
they're called it's spiritism is what they. It's like
Spiritism.
A branch. I think it's pretty much the same thing, but it's like, I don't know, more culty, I guess.
I mean, to be honest, some of the things reminded me of some of the things that like Joe Rogan promotes on his podcast. He's like, yeah, just take a little bit of the DMT, and you'll see all those alien spirits and all that. It kind of makes me think that this was an early precursor of kind of the modern pharmacopoeia phenomena, right? Of people who are all seeking after the spiritual realm through different substances. And it makes me wonder if the guys back then were just like, yeah, if you go up on this hill and take this, couple pills.
Put these lead masks on.
Yeah, put these lead masks on. You're going to have a trip you'll never forget. And they just happened to get their hands on some bad stuff, and it killed them. But
because I've seen that mystery a couple times. I think it was even on Unsolved Mysteries. I could be wrong, but it's probably one of my favorite shows ever. The original, not the new one. The new one's kind of good, but old one is superior with Robert Stack. He's the best.
Even the connection with the UFO topic was really interesting.
That's why I kept that in there, because I was like, UFO, water, something weird there. And I want to bring this up with Jake and see what he thinks about it. And what do you think about that?
Well, there was an article I wanted to talk about today of a recent news article coming out talking about UFOs being found on ocean floors. And we didn't get to include it in today's Skiba News Nation, but there's something about water and the UFO phenomena. Is that where these entities go and hide out? That's why we don't see them, normally, and they come out of the water? Or is that possibly where these people have figured out that spiritual entities are actually at? It's not so much the UFO, but the spiritual entities they're trying to connect or associated with bodies of water. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to unpack there, but I definitely think this whole scientific spiritism thing is interesting because
kind of kooky.
I mean,
it's good to expose stuff like that on Skiba News Nation, I think.
Yeah.
I mean, just to show that like Harry Houdini wasn't a bad person. Like he did things because he's a human being and he wanted to have that connection with his mom, but then he saw that they were frauds, and so he dedicated the rest of his life to exposing it. And I think exposing things are what's important in today's world. And that kind of leads up to the next clip about, I'm about to expose to you guys what the lefties have been. It's just watch this clip. Hypocrisy.
Illegal immigration is wrong, and a primary goal of comprehensive immigration
Chuck
reform
Schumer
must be to dramatically curtail future illegal immigration. People who enter the United States without our permission are illegal aliens, and illegal aliens should not be treated the same as people who entered the U.S. legally.
The only way we're going to have a great future in America is if we welcome and embrace immigrants, the dreamers, and all of them, because our ultimate goal is to help the dreamers, but get a path to citizenship for all 11 million or however many undocumented there are here.
What we need to do simultaneously, secure our borders with technology, personnel, physical barriers if necessary in some places.
We will not build a wall. Instead, we will build an economy where everyone who wants a good job can get one.
Ladies and gentlemen, no great country can say it is secure without being able to control its borders.
I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence.
There will not be another foot of wall constructed on my administration.
Between 2005 and 2009, a vast amount of progress has been made on our borders and ports of entry. The progress includes construction of a 630-mile border fence, or 630 miles of border fence, that create a significant barrier to illegal immigration on our southern land border.
I made it so clear to the president that there is not going to be a wall.
We can't tolerate a situation where people come to the United States in violation of the law. We must also clarify the status of millions who are here illegally, many who have put down roots. For those who wish to become citizens, we should require them to pay a penalty and pay taxes, learn English, go to the back of the line behind those who played by the rules. That is the fair, practical, and promising way forward. The bill before us will certainly do some good. It will authorize some badly needed funding for better fences and better security along our borders.
Getting questions constantly from foreign leaders about some of the wackier suggestions that are being made.
We're going to have strong, incredible borders, and people are going to come into our country, but they're going to come into our country legally.
It's not just Mr. Trump's proposals. I mean, you're also hearing concerns about Mr. Cruz's proposals, which in some ways are just as draconian.
What about your
when it comes
proposals?
to immigration.
We're going to build a wall.
This is just one more example of something that is not thought through and is primarily put forward for political consumption.
I voted for a fence. I voted, unlike most Democrats, and some of you won't like it, I voted for 700-mile fence. But let me tell you, we can build a fence 40 stories high, unless you change the dynamic.
So what a bunch of hypocrites. I mean, what are your thoughts about that? As soon as Trump said we're going to build a wall and we want them to come in legally, it's like they completely changed their mindset and the way that they think about coming in legally and becoming a citizen, which, I mean, who doesn't want that to happen legally?
It goes right along with that news story we started off with Texas sending down military vehicles to slow down the flow of immigrants illegally coming into this country. And it just says a double down of kind of the hypocrisy, kind of like that story we covered of how Florida sent up all those immigrants to the Martha's Vineyard.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you can't stay here, even though all of their policies and talks all about opening doors and welcoming people. I mean, there are people in need. There are people that have bad living situations in their home countries, and they need a place of refuge. They need better economic opportunity. However, undermining the path to citizenship, undermining laws, and allowing people to be in our country that are not documented and not willing to participate in the legal system is opening up our country to violent crimes, gangs, trafficking. Human trafficking is probably one of the number one issues with the border crossing problem. I mean, just in the time we've been down in Texas, we constantly, Sierra and my phone are going off with Amber Alert this, Amber Alert that.
Every day.
And I think, and I don't get that very often.
Really?
A little further up north. And I kind of wonder if it's because we're so close to the border, so many people are being kidnapped and taken back and forth, and maybe that's a reason they're sending military vehicles, tanks and stuff down to the border to, stop some of the bad types that are coming back and forth. And, it's just the hypocrisy. The number one thing I got out of that video is,
yeah, it's kind of like Houdini exposing the hypocrisy. We should always expose hypocrisy when we see it, because, I mean, that's just right in your face.
Yep, it really is.
So, anyways, that's all I got for history. Sorry I took such a big left turn, but I only have Jake for so many days, and so I wanted to share that with you guys. So that's all I got, and it's time for some memes. Meme me up. Meme me up.
All right, so after some of the depressing news stories we've covered today, it's always important to, leave off with a high note, right? So let's show this first meme here. Isn't it weird how we pay money to see other people? And somebody comments, you mean prostitution, concerts, or movies? And the answer is no, glasses. And being somebody that wears glasses myself, yes, it is kind of weird how I pay to see other people crystal clear.
I think everybody in this room has prescription glasses on.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it is a cost that when the apocalypse hits, I'm going to be like, man, I wish I kept that old pair of glasses I threw out. Now it's so hard to find somebody to get. But sometimes I wonder if you go to the eye doctor, if they don't have kind of a sifty ploy to change your vision so that you have to keep coming back for a new prescription. Because I always go back and I'm like,
and they puff your eye with that.
Yeah, they puff your eye and they're like, all right, is this clear or this clear? And they send you home with a prescription that's slightly different than the one you had.
And I don't know about you, but when I go home after that, I feel like I'm in a bubble for the next week until I'm used to the glasses again.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. Anyways, next meme here, we got Facebook ads right up in your face and things I've mentioned in the privacy of my own home. Yeah, Facebook is all over monitoring our habits. Next picture here. Worried about dying? Don't. You will live forever, right? The scripture talks about there's a resurrection coming, but all you have to worry about is location, location, location.
Yep.
All right, next picture here. Your call is very important to us. Please enjoy this 40-minute flute solo. Oh, man. When dealing with
Walgreens,
insurance companies, medical stuff, they put these flute solos on, and you're just there for hours and hours
I
waiting.
can whistle it back to them sometimes.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, when they finally pick up, I'm like whistling it back to them.
Yeah. Yeah.
I could do that too.
Oh, no, I've put myself in hold. All right, next picture. A church you can relate to. I've been looking for a church like yours. I'm heavily into sin, and I have absolutely no desire to change. Welcome. Unfortunately, sometimes our modern religious systems are more country clubs than places to walk out righteousness. All right, next picture here. The only facial expression I've had for the last 2 years. Huh?
Welcome to clown world. Yep.
Marky mark there. Next picture here. Me explaining to the triple juiced, double masked people who are scared of a cold why I can't be around them. You're a thief of joy. That's why. Oh, man. Michael from The Office.
Love him.
Well, all of the brainwashing we've covered today, unfortunately, that's how it kind of turns out, is they just, all they care about is what the news is telling them to be scared of next.
Yep.
All right, and our final meme of the day, a lot of problems can be solved by removing some foods and some people and some habits and beliefs from our life. And that's pretty true. Maybe just kind of a, not such a funny meme, but more of a good reminder, of focusing on ourselves more so than focusing on everyone else out there. Sometimes, even though that's kind of what we're doing on Skiba News Nation, we're kind of looking out and seeing all these deceptions. it's good to make sure we are working on ourselves first. So that's all the memes and news for today, man. It's been
awesome,
great.
Man. Well, this has been a great Skiba News Nation with your current news and great Opus Corner, and I hope you enjoyed the history, and I hope you guys enjoyed episode 24, and we'll see you in episode 25. So stay tuned.
If you would like to submit a story, topic, or have any other inquiries, please email submit@skibanewsnation.com. Also, you can email Jeremiah Skiba personally at jeremiah@skibanewsnation.com. Also, email Jake personally at jake@skibanewsnation.com. If you want to write us a letter, send us something, help support us, or just say hi, please send your letter to Jeremiah Skiba, P.O. Box 560-271, The Colony, Texas 75056. If you write us a letter, I'll do my best to write you back.
Hey Skiba News Nation family, thank you for watching. Please like, share, and subscribe. You can also help support this channel by getting yourself some Skiba News Nation merch. Also, we are proud to announce that we are now on Patreon, where you will get bonus content, shoutouts, and much more. Thank you again for watching and helping us stay on the quest for truth.
Huge shout out to all our Patreon supporters. Thank you so much for your support. We couldn't do this show without you.
If you want to help support us, go to patreon.com/Skiba News Nation. We are also proud to announce that Skiba News Nation podcast is now available on podcast platforms.